Before carrying on with the issue of how families grew in terms of a boy getting married, who will just simply report to his mother that he intended marrying a lady from a particular ward. That will then be reported to his father, who will take it upon himself to see to it that that issue is fulfilled. It's where then the issue of lobola comes in. Lobola was actually not a thing that is so compulsory and business-minded as it is being done today. It was through Sir Theophilus Shepstone who came up with this number of kekli that was supposed to pay. Originally, if you didn't have a beast to pay, you would give anything to that family as a symbol of appreciation that you actually intend taking their daughter. Then that will be enough, because this issue of cattle develops slowly. And today, if you look at it, people have actually changed this thing to business. They are paying thousands, and in no time you find that that marriage has actually broken and is dead. And people are actually lamenting that I've spent 150,000 paying lobola for this, because it's an exchange between two families. You are creating a relationship that you have to develop. This harm that we're actually suffering was brought in when we actually lost our way of life, which is our indigenous knowledge system. Professor Mazisi Nene, the well-known author, puts this very well when he says the fact that people have been conquered does not mean that their minds should also be defeated. If their minds are not conquered or defeated, they will hide their customs, what they know about their histories, and not allow other nations to destroy their heritage. Doing that allows foreign people to destroy the heritage of the indigenous people. This is mainly caused by the fact that the indigenous people themselves are selling their heritage to foreigners. And that makes foreign people to realize that indigenous people are looking down upon their own heritage. It becomes clear that they despise their own and crave for the heritage of the foreign people, which they accept with pride. They start to imitate foreign people in their way of speech, in their way of walking itself. The conquered people become a laughing stock to those people that they think appreciate them. They see them as incomplete beings who are beggars in their land. There is in fact nothing as bad as people who are no longer proud about their heritage and culture. They say they are modernized and have left old-fashioned and barbaric acts. They say they are modernized, yet referring to the way of life of foreign people, unquote. Why is Professor Mazisi Nene reaching this point? This is the harm which was actually caused by missionaries. Missionary education had a very serious impact in destroying African culture and religion. People were told to do away with certain cultures, and their religion was demonized and referred to as heathen. This led to African people doing away with their culture and religion, which has a serious impact onto their languages, as African languages cannot be easily detached from culture and religion. The missionaries were in a mission of paving way and preparing the playing field for capitalists who stole the wealth that belonged to Africans. Africans were then focusing on Christianity and not worried about the gains the capitalists were making out of their land and wealth. It is precisely the reason why other people argue that missionaries were agents of colonization, because the link between colonialism and missionary work were very strong. Much as missionaries wanted to spread Christian faith and the way of life, but in South Africa, as elsewhere, missionary activity often went hand in hand with merchants and traders and the colonial government. In other words, the missionary was working for God, the merchant for profit, and the magistrate for colonial government. So you can actually look at this thing and see how our cultural heritage was demonized. This now brings me to the very thorny issue that we think of today, which is the land issue. The land issue, I mentioned earlier on that when it comes to building of a homestead, you have to undergo a certain process. There is a process of ukukhonza, which is to secure a place. If you secure a place, you go to the inkosi of that particular, it's an application for a homestead site. And after securing that, you build ukubekwa kwenxiwa, which is the allocation of the site, then site preparation for building, and then official reporting of the household. And departing from the old site, what do? This relates to our religion. The reporting of the site, when you are being allocated and then you start preparing the site for building, it's where then you have to prepare beer and report to the ancestors that you have secured this site. It's where then you are going to build their homestead. And after building that, you have to report to them and ask them to get into this household so that they will be the eyes and ears of the departed in this household. Then if you happen to move away from that old site, you have to report that you are now moving away from this place so that they could actually move together with you. But when it comes to the issue of land disposition, how did this actually work? Because people were forcefully moved away from their land without any reporting. Msimang points out that why people did not actually say the home belongs to him as the head. I'll just simply quote him. The head of a homestead, Umnumzane, did not say the homestead was his, but gave the ownership to his father, the father who had already deceased. Well, the father will referring to will be somebody who was dead already. This was another way of saying that according to AmaZulu, the homestead belongs to the ancestors. It was therefore important that anything that took place within the homestead be reported to the ancestors. It was also imperative that when a new site for the boy who had got married, or if the homestead was relocating, a goat or a cow had to be slaughtered to report the new envisaged site to the ancestors. When reporting this was the way of requesting them to accompany you, guide and protect you at the new site or elsewhere where you were going. So this is important because today people just buy homes in town without reporting them, and then you'll find that their ancestors won't even know where they are or where they've actually gone to. You just simply say, I'm staying there. This is actually disturbing because, as I was saying, the land issue is a very thorny issue. If you look at the Western approach, people say the land is ours. In our case, we say the land belongs to Inkos, who is the custodian of the land on behalf of the people. So there's also a clash there. So the idiom that we're using clashes and causes some problems. This comes to the issue of the whites who are saying charity begins at home. And in our case, the African idiom says, Gudla is hambikala. So you have to cater for a foreign person before you look for your family or yourself. You see, when you say charity begins at home, you are looking for yourself and your family. If you say Gudla is hambikala, you cater for a foreign person. It was not foolish for our forefathers to look after the whites who were foreign in this land. They were following their idiom, cultural idiom. And these people then took an advantage of that, and they started to dispossess these people of their land. And now, earlier on, I did mention the issue of the architect or architecture that is used in building our sites. I would like to cite an example here, which is going to tell us why in places like Mapungubwe, in places like Zimbabwe ruins, we had some problems. I'm saying it is, however, disturbing to realize through research that the Eurocentric archaeological approach has done a lot of harm to African heritage sites like the great Zimbabwe ruins in Mapungubwe. Much as many people regard sites as heritage sites when graded the Eurocentric way, but that leaves a lot to be desired when one weighs their archaeologists' knowledge of what Africans value and regard as their heritage. Such type of thinking is influenced by Person's remark when he discusses the destruction of archaeological evidence at the Great Zimbabwe ruins around 1900. The Mugabe clan was expelled when the site became a national monument. Untrained white enthusiasts then dug out the great enclosure down to bedrock level in the hope of finding evidence of exotic non-Africans who they believe must have built the city. All that they found, they called native rubbish. In other words, they destroyed much evidence of the city's African origin. So every trained archaeologist who excavated later at Great Zimbabwe from 1905 onwards confirmed its African origin. So this then tells you that when I was discussing the issue of preparing the floor, how it was done the African way, why were the cities having those structures that could remain for a long time by then? Foreign people thought it couldn't have been done by Africans. But without actually studying and understanding our architect, they then decided to do it their own way, thereby destroying. This is a similar scenario when you go to Ingwavuma, you have got Lubombo Border Cave, which has been declared a national heritage site. And they started excavating on that place and say they found the bones of a 14-year-old who was buried there. The Egyptian way was embalmed. And yet if you go to history, they'll tell you that that was a cave which was used by Inyanga, a medicine man of the Mngomezulu clan, who would keep young boys who had not yet reached puberty there. So the issue of the embalmment and all this is completely out of picture. It's only that people are speculating that traditional people could not have their ways and means. It is therefore imperative that when we are doing these things, we should actually first have the understanding of the African philosophy of life so that we could actually understand why and how these people were living. What is it that was driving them to do things the way they did? So it is important then to go through a scenario. Unfortunately, I used to say when I'm talking to people, we do have our own recordings, but people don't want to consult them. From the word of mouth, a person of Professor Sitim Simang wrote a book, Kusadlwa Ngoludala. That book is rich because it touches upon all aspects of development in a traditional situation. It starts from how children were brought up, what is it that was taught to them, how did they approach a scenario where they would look for certain skills amongst them, how were they building their homesteads, which is the architecture, how were they actually living within those homesteads, and how were they actually looking at amakhosi that were leading them. This actually brought even the issue of what was being done when somebody has passed on, when somebody has died. How was he buried, or how was he or she buried? In the case of ordinary people, in the case of Amakosi, what is it that was being done? How were the ancestors consulted? But if you fail to consult that, because we have mentioned the issue of ownership of these people and how these people actually revered what was theirs and how they appreciated their way of life, you also fail to understand why people are failing to study us if we actually did study them. In other words, when we're dealing with issues, it's either whatever field it may be, we must try to move from the known to the unknown, rather than using a foreign concept of moving from the unknown to the known, because there's going to be a clash. The way Eurocentric people look at us will clash with the way we look at ourselves and look at their foreign way of life. So it's easy to first understand our philosophy of life, then develop from there. In a case where a foreign person will come and tell me that he's going to tell me about what is happening when we are building a Zulu hut, then I'll ask a question. How do you know it? What is it that is involved in terms of language? What idiom is involved? Like the one that I mentioned earlier on, but you refer to the rooftop of the hut, but you are referring to a person who is much talkative without actually doing anything. So people who are saying they are good in thatching, they could fail to thatch unless they are guided by other people. That's why we used to say taking an advice from another person was a wise way of doing things. Injobo enhle ithungelwe bandla. Because as you are busy molding that injobo of yours, whilst you are at the place where, at the arena where other people are, they will tell you, no, be careful. You might actually damage the thing. Go this way. So it's good to take an advice from other people. It is also wise, as for now, that if we take the route back to who we are, we should know our philosophy of life, and then that is going to inform the way we should handle things. I like to sum this up by reading a citation which says, Nyelisani Mlaudzi and Alitan Tolwane in 2009 presented a paper where they said, there is a need for a change of mentality when dealing with the issues of our national heritage. As indigenous South Africans, let us not teach heritage as if the past belongs to the whites. We are the natives of this country, and surely our past should surpass that of those who came as settlers. We should not be apologetic. Look at the debacle with regards to the Freedom Park Wall of Remembrance. The very same perpetrators are now pushing for the names of their heroes to be included as well. However, surprisingly, just opposite the very same park, there is a Fortrekker monument which solely deals with the African past. This is like when a rapist impregnates his victim, and after serving his sentence, he comes back and demands that the victim's child carry his surname. What an insult. So, as much as we agree that we have to let bygones be bygones, it is also imperative that we level the playing ground by rectifying the biased history of our lovely country. When we say we should not bring up the past, that does not mean we should not talk about our heroes and heroines who laid the foundation our lives are built upon. So it is imperative that we should revive this heritage. In other words, young people are duty-bound to read and learn more about themselves before learning the foreign histories. If you remember earlier on at school, we used to know the Otto von Bismarck of this world, the man of iron who could control 5 balls in the air. But without knowing the history of King Shaka, without knowing the local history of Inkosi, of my clan, without knowing who my grandfather is, who my great-grandfather is, not knowing your own lineage. And you could actually go and know that Jesus Christ is from Jesse, which is in Matthew, in the Gospel of Matthew. Let us have our own gospel. Let's know who we are, where we come from, so as to understand where we're heading to. This is very, very important. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this will land on ears that will know and understand what I meant. Thank you.